Right. So we've got some, so we can move this out of the way. Maybe up there. And that. Now, I don't expect you to read all this now. And in fact, I did put this on the document I sent you, so you don't have to read it now. But we will be looking at some of these things very briefly. And I was thinking about, what do you think about when making a painting, the actual practicalities of, maybe starting with your drawings, your photos, or what's in your head, or whatever it might be. What are you going to do when you get the paints out? And you won't do it all at the beginning, but you will think about it as you go through the work, or at least I do. So, and one of them is working from grayscale, if that's the way you're starting, into colour. And if you're doing that, then many of you have done, I know that we're not, you haven't all done the same things with me over the last few years, and some people not at all, but you might well have got some knowledge or a lot of knowledge of using colour. And so the three areas really is choosing a hue range, is thinking, well, what colours am I going to use? Am I going to use pretty much what I feel is the reality, or am I going to alter that? And if I am going to use the reality, what colours would they be anyway? And I've put here an analogous hue range, predominantly question mark, so colours that are close together on the colour circle, or with strong complementary biases, which are the opposite on the colour circles. And then we've got the tonal value range, how dark and how light the work is, or will it be fairly muted and somewhere in the middle? Should you make a working sketch to help you choose these? Maybe not. And I put a bit about that. And then how do I decide on the colour value? All light with dark, or all dark with light? Lots of questions around the impact really that your work's going to make in terms of the value, the light and dark of the picture, the painting. And then we've got space, which is a word that's fairly sort of ambiguous in its own right, really. Means different things. But in an abstract painting, I'll put here, space is ambiguous and contradictory. So it's not a perspectival sort of space necessarily. It might be. It might be very flat or deep. But a painting is an optical illusion. It's not a literal one, not something made in 3 dimensions. So and it's usually often developed away from the representative methods of perspective and depth. Certainly, you can have more than one perspective in a painting. You could have, you can alter it and shift things around and do all sorts of things. And there are various things to think about. One is overlap is a useful way of showing space. Some things coming forward, some back, whether they're opaque or translucent. And the relative value of saturation, that's sort of how bright your colours are. Bright and light tend to come forward, and dull or muted and darker go back. But they don't always. It's all it's all relative. So you might find it's the opposite in the painting that you're doing. But whatever it is, you are trying to create some. You might be trying to create some sort of feeling of space behind the picture surface, if you like, sort of an atmospheric space. Or you might want it to be very, very flat, in which case you won't have much space at all. And it's all just to be thought about. The edges is something that is a term that's in the book I've written down here, Abstract Painting by Vicky Perry, which some of you I know have seen. It's very good, actually, that book. It's easy to understand and it's useful. And she talks about the edges. And that's to do with the edge of the painting which makes the painting into an object. It's an actual thing, this painting. It's not a view through to something else. It's not an illustration of something put on a bit of paper, sort of like a graphic sort of diagram or anything like that. It is an actual object, a sculpture almost. And so what happens as you paint, and how do you decide on the actual edge of your painting? Where is it going to be? On a board or a canvas, and as you cut it up, you've got the edges set before you start. On a piece of paper, you can add to it or cut bits off and you change things around. So you can alter it, which is quite useful. So we'll come to that. And then we've got some different sorts of edges, which Vicky Perry talks about, and I think it's quite an interesting way of describing them, but we won't go into that now. Otherwise, we'd be here all day doing one thing. And then I putting the paint on and the surface quality. And artists do that differently, as you know. You've got Frank Auerbach at one extreme with paint as thick as I don't know, as thick as his palette, and sticking out and catching the dust sort of paint. Or there's very, very flat and smooth, and everything in between. So you've got that sort of to think about as well. And whether it looks, you can have thin paint or thick paint, and translucent or whatever it might be, but sometimes it will look finished, it'll look sort of put on, and you'll feel happy with it. Other times it looks just sketchy, as though you've just done a quick watercolor sketch, and there isn't really a way of saying where one begins and the other ends, but you sort of need to, it's something for you to think about and to sort of catch yourself and think, actually, that's all a bit scrappy, or I'd rather overwork that and I prefer the scrappy quality of the sketch. It's sort of, what is it that you want and how are you going to think about that? So that's what that's all about, which comes into the pictures we're going to look at next, I think. So I started off with this. I love this painting. I can't even now think whether I've seen it in real life or not. I seem to think I have actually. By Constable, and it's an oil painting. It's not that big, as you can see, but it was done in the middle of the 19th century, and I just think it's got that real modern feel. It doesn't, I mean, people paint like this now, and we all think it's lovely and quite modern. So I'm going to put that down there for the moment, make it a bit bigger, and just look at what there is there. So there's some wonderful brush marks, really extrovert, if you like, sort of loose marks going right here over, well, it's 4/5 of the paper, really, almost. And to show this real heavy rain, it feels as though it's, the rain blustering down here, suddenly coming down over the sea, or over the land beyond the sea. And then the kind of swirl of the wind and that sort of thing up here, and the darkness of it. And then the light beyond, which we all know, we've all seen that. And I just think, if anyone had masses of time, you could go out and try some cloud studies, just doing clouds for the sake of it, really, because that rain, when you see it like that, looking over, particularly the sea, but over fields as well, is really quite dramatic. And you often get a shaft of light on the land that really lights up the green of the fields, or whatever it might be. In this case, it's the sea. He's used those really exciting brush marks and changing direction and overlaying this colour in quite thinnish veils, but quite confident and definite. It's not a sloppy sort of vague sort of fiddling about. He's really got these marks coming down over this colours in the background, which are the same sort of colours, this sort of orangey browny colour and this bluey, basically it's a Prussian bluey kind of blue colour.
It really is a bruised sky, isn't
It's a
it?
good word for it, yeah, definitely a good word for it. So it's those colours. I mean, it looks as though he's only used 2 colours and white, and he might only have done. He might have had those out of his tube ready-made, and they're complementary, of course. Blue and orange are complementary. Here we have a very dark shade of blue, so dark it almost looks black, and you might even have some black in there for all I know. And this dulled down orangey colour here, I'm going to make that even bigger just to see what we can see just down there. There you can sort of see it's got white in it there, and here it's got the blue and the brown translucent glazes overlaying each other here. And the colours are they're just great. They really work with each other. They're opposite colours, but they're very muted. They're not saturated, but they do the trick because they are the brown and the blue. And I think that's a really good example of using colour in a good way, with impactful way. So, And then also the mark making was the thicker and the thin. Here the paint's quite thick down the bottom here. Here it's thinner. And the layering, you can see through. It gives you the feeling of this wonderful space that there is there partly because of the difference in the thick paint at the front here and going to this much thinner at the back. And then the sky, actually one thing to say is that skies often become in paintings, or can become easily, a bit of a backdrop, a bit of a sort of sloshy wash you put behind the detail at the front here. And in the best cases, the sky has just as much impact and heaviness, weight, if you like, the word weight, as the rest of the painting. And this painting obviously does have just, the sky has got equal weight to what's going on at the front. Never mind the size, that's a different thing. Just the weight of the paint, the dynamism of the brushstrokes, and what's going on here, they are equal. So it's a real object. The sky. Same century, but very different. I'll just make this smaller again now. This is quite a famous one. I don't know whether I've seen it, but I've seen it in books a lot at the Musée d'Orsay, which I haven't been to for so long that I might have seen it and not remembered. Paul Seruzier, and he was a sort of I think I put it here, maybe I didn't. He was a neo-impressionist. That was after the Impressionists, and sort of coming up to the time of what were known as, a bit later on, as the post-impressionists. And he was sort of influenced or inspired by or worked with, I don't know, but Seurat and Gauguin, Cézanne, who all worked like this, with these patches of flat colour, quite bright. Cézanne didn't always use them quite as bright as that, but Gauguin did. And in this case, a bit like Seurat, he was the one who did all the dots, the pointillism, and he was interested in the science of colour. If you look closely, if I zoom this in, you can see that his colour patches are really made with a square or flat brush, they're known as. Marks with that kind of brush. 1, 2, 3 blue ones there, and one there. The green is made up of these squarish, can you see them brush marks there? And the yellow too, although they're blended together. So it's all really made with quite similar sorts of marks. And then a little bit of, a few lines and so on. Looking really, it's quite geometric. It's horizontals and verticals, and then those squarish kind of patches. So that's sort of what was going on at the time. And he would have been looking at the kind of aesthetics, really. I mean, partly the view he'd got, and what was dark and what was light, and what was reflection and what wasn't. But he was also looking at how the balance of the yellows and the reds and the greens and so on, in his view, and the darks and the lights worked with each other and created a kind of unified whole of balanced shapes and colours in his view. In some of them, I've given a black and white version to show the balance in terms of the value, but not for that one, but I have in the next one, which is also by him. And I put in because it's got these same squarish marks, but they are a bit smaller. And that's the size. I haven't got the size of the painting on this one, so if I just move that, you can see them sorry about that, quite clearly up there. And then with this, he's mixing, but I think they called it, or later on it was called optical mixing, where you put two different blues together, or in this case the blue and the green together, in sort of fairly straightforward pure colour, and then your eye would sort of mix the two together, but you get a kind of bit of movement in there because it's not actually blended. And that's sort of what Seurat was doing with his quantillist work, was working on the way colour mixed. Your eye would mix the colours, to be fairly simple about it. And that was another one where he's really looking at the shapes of these buildings, the yellow farm, probably painted yellow to begin with, and maybe some new thatch possibly. And then, but he was just looking at the bright and the light on the yellow, or the yellow farm, and then he's making the top of the head here possibly yellow. I don't know what it is, but just looking at the shapes, picking out the main shapes you could see in his image, and making a piece of a work about those shapes and the colours as well. So that's interesting. Here it also shows you how close the tones are. The yellow is a bit lighter than some of these, but not much. It's not any light. It's no lighter than the greys and so on. and then you just get the odd bit of dark coming in here. So the balance is quite limited. So it fits with this idea of an impactful painting and sort of the differences you might get with the different ranges of contrast that you find in hue or saturation or tonal value. And if you can find two sets of contrasts within those areas and maybe one not, that's quite an easy painting to look at and quite comfortable, which this one is, I would say. And this has got contrast in saturation. We've got some really pretty bright yellows, one or two bits of bright blue. Otherwise, it's muted colours. And the contrast in hue, we've got some sort of reds, yellows, and blues pretty much. But the contrast in tonal value is minimal. There is some, but it's not a lot. So there's a sort of feeling of looking at that as well. Now, this was moving up to the next 20th century. And I just chose these two, which I felt were working in a similar-ish kind of way. I'll move the black and white spin a bit in a minute. This one here is, that first is Ivan Hitchens, 1950s-ish. And I thought his work would have a bit similar effect to Corbusier in a way. He's got his garden and house and so on all red with the green trees and so on. And once again, looking at the black and white version here, I'll just move that over, trying to. We've got dark and we've got mid-tone, lots of mid-tone and some dark. We don't have any light really. So all of this is the same, along with the trees. And then we've got the dark and this bit of sky, and then we've got the darker patch of sky here balanced with the darker here, and then this shape here. So it feels very, I like that shape. It goes like that and zigzags up and goes around. It's a nice shape. It feels comfortable. And I think not everybody wants their paintings to feel comfortable, but that's one way of looking at your paintings, to see what they're looking like. And then he's got the brush strokes of you can see the direction of the brush strokes. This way they're kind of more melded together than the Cerizier, not so patchy, but you can still see the kind of way it's worked, or up and downish sort of marks here, sideways there. And then he's got sort of patches on the trunk. And the marks change according to the shape of the buildings up to a point. It's not just flat and filled in. And then we've got the sky scumbled with different colour mixes, colours coming in. So it's not so dissimilar. And it's, quite a few years later. This one is contemporary. I went to a talk at a kind of day thing with a friend a while ago. And they talked about various current artists, and they were all there. And this chap gave us a talk about his work, Saeed Dye. And I liked his work, actually. I mean, this one included, but some of the others more than this. But I just thought this had a similarity to the other paintings with the way the colours have emerged. We do have a, I want to just bring that in. We do have a, there you can see it better now. We do have a black, white and medium tone range in this one, as you can see from there. But the shapes are sort of merged together so that we've got the white shapes sliding in here, and then a little bit coming down here, and then the rest, all of this here is, fairly similar. It's varied a bit, and the colours are mixed, quite colourful. We've got browns and greens, bluey greens, yellowy greens, quite a bright orange there. So little bits of bright blue there, tiny wee bits. It's all quite carefully put in. That green there looks bright or brighter, and it is brighter. And you notice it because it's brighter than the surrounding chromatic greys, the more muted colours around it. Little tiny bits of orange just picked out, just to bring it out, to bring it kind of up and give it more of a sort of space you can walk into. Your eye follows the orange, it goes to that patch there. And then it possibly goes to that light patch in here maybe, or the light, the pale orange up there, that bit of lit up area there. And then perhaps comes around. You can kind of wiggle your way around through this churchyard. And those little alterations of colour that he would have made once he'd got them established, the main shapes, are really very thoughtful and important. So there's a lot you can do later on in the painting like that, you know, just really kind of looking and finishing it off in that sense. The surface also is really, I like the surface on his paintings. I can make this a bit bigger. Not that I've seen them in real life. Also, this is a bit pixelated now that I've blown this up. You can see here. But you get a bit of a feeling of this, the way there's quite a dark colour underneath and then these lighter colours put on top. With a dryish brush, it's sort of scumbled over, you can, the brown bits are showing through. And so on, as far as you can see. You can't tell very easily, but you can see it's quite mottled and quite textured, probably quite a dry brush. It's not really a sticky, smooth sort of washy brush at all. So that's what was name now? Dye. Let's make it a bit smaller. I'll put all this back together again later on. Saeed Dye, that's right. Now this one is Milton Avery, I've now got too small again, who was an American painter of the 40s and 50s. And I brought him in as one of several people who really liked Matisse, worked from Matisse, Matisse's ideas in many ways. I think he was a bit of a one-off in America. They had quite an interesting Royal Academy exhibition of his work about a year ago, I think. Because I don't think he's been shown in this country much, so I thought it was interesting. And this one, I can't really remember whether this colours come out quite right. It's I took this at the show, and the point I'm going to make here is, well, I've said here, look at the range of hues, the range of saturation, and the range of tonal value, and how they managed in this apparently simple painting, and why. And I think what was interesting that it's very much flat painted shapes, painted shapes, and the hues are all different. So pretty much every patch is slightly different. So the two hands are not the same level of pink, very paler and not so. The head and the ear are different, the two different shapes, they're different colours of red or different tones of red. Two different blues. The legs are different for obvious reasons, shadow and not, but that's been picked out. So the flatness is simple, but yet it's been very carefully explored so that you use the colour to create a feeling of dimension. Even the yellows, they're not the same. He has changed them. What else can I say about that? I can't remember now with the jacket and this green. I'm sure when I look, the green has varying shades in it too. So, and it's different to this. But what he's done with those colours is merged them. So we've got, the green and the black and the brown, and the black there, all merged into pretty much one shape at a distance. You don't see it particularly differently. The blue and the yellow likewise, because it's not a very dark blue, from a distance merge. And into this purple too. And the light patch was this central source of light coming from a window, maybe lighting up odd features coming through here. So it was incredibly carefully put together, and consequently I found very kind of inviting to look at. I suppose it felt very comfortable. It felt like a space that two people were sitting comfortably in. But yet it had this dynamism with the use of the colour that you wouldn't really have expected from something so, which felt so simple. I think that's probably what I'm trying to say. So I love his work. I like his landscapes. They're very loose pieces, so you might like to look at those. Moving down to Matisse himself and Patrick Heron, who liked Matisse, was very keen on Matisse. Matisse himself, this one here was quite a kind of, what's the word, when something is quite a main part in your career. It was a sort of turning point in his career, I think. And apparently, because I did, with another class, we looked at a video, which I haven't sort of put details of. Oh, I did, I didn't take this out. Oh, I was going to remove this because it wasn't the same course, but I left it there. So if you ever want to look at that video, a podcast, I can't think of the title now of the series of pieces, but there was one where various art historians and curators and so on talk about art, and they talked about this piece, and they were saying that he at the time it looks kind, we look at it now and we think, gosh, he's sort of done this, done that, thought about that. But at the time, I think it was a painting he just wasn't happy with and went back to, and ended up just being very daring and got his red paint, his sort of reddy Venetian red colour, and just painted everything out apart from the objects. And they must have found that from some diaries or something, because how would you know? And it was just it was just a thing to do, like we all do. We paint, we paint something out, we put white paint over something, or we change it, we get rid of it because we're not happy with it. We feel relaxed, but we don't really like it anyway. And I think that's sort of what he was doing, according to listening to that. And of course, now it's very, very famous. And so what he's done by doing that is he's retained a feeling of things that are at the front being a little bit bigger, obviously becoming smaller. So he hasn't changed that, but he's flattened everything by having the same red throughout. So that brings, and also red comes forward. So everything ends up being sort of more on the same plane, on the surface of the picture, with a little bit of depth, because we know that there's some perspective there, and we know about the size, the idea of size. But otherwise, it was quite a radical thing for whatever the date was, which I haven't got there, obviously, but it was about 1910 or something like that, or maybe earlier. And what I put Henry Matty, sorry, mixed up here. Now this one is just a small one. I got more of Patrick Heron. Patrick Heron, you might know, painted at one point in his career these enormous, vast, 3 meters by 1 meter or something, 2.5 meters by 1 paintings, and they were painted with quite small brushes. So I don't think this will. I managed to blow this up. I think probably it'll just pixelate. This gallery thing gets annoying. I can't see anything. Let me just go up a bit bigger and see. It's not too bad, but you still really can't tell. It just looks smooth. It looks as though it's come from my book, which it has. So that's what it looks like. But his work is vast. He's looking at the edges, and I've got a whole bit more about that coming up. He's got these colours, quite bright colours in some cases, attached to the edges, sort of framing it, you could say, or are they part of it, or what are they? And because of the placing of the colours and what happens with bright red and bright green juxtaposed, or even the yellow and the red orange juxtaposed, they end up being sort of not so much framing, but they're on the same level as, they're sort of like holding all these colours to them. It's sort of almost like a jigsaw, really, almost like a pattern. Then you've got this purple shape. It's not attached to anything. Is it floating? Is it on the surface? Is it further back? Because it's bluish, you'd think it could be further back, but does it look like, it's very ambiguous. And he was after this feeling of flatness, and I think he achieved it. He also, according to something I listened to, painted with very small brushes. So these reds were not flat, filled in with big brush type areas. There were lots of small brush marks, more than one layer. So one layer of red, another layer of red in a marginally different colour. So you get a bit of a flickering of the two reds, just sort of juddering between one with one. Oh gosh, I can't find how to make this smaller now. One against another. Let me just bring this down very slightly. We'll do it. How do I make that? Oh, there we go. It's down there now. I can't see it. Right. That's a normal. So that's his black and white version of that, or the black and white version. Once again, you can see the tonal value, and the darker bits are all down here coming forward. The bright blue is a bit of an anomaly. It's bright blue normally would go further back than red, but it's at the front and it's attached to the bottom. Things at the front come forward. Things that are sticking, fixed to the edge look as though they're on the surface. They don't look as though they're going back, and so on. I could say masses about that, but probably you need to read a bit about it too, because there's not really time in the day to do everything, to look at this and to look at the colours and to look at textures and everything else. But I put here use of the edge to hold the imagery to the picture plane. That means holding everything so it feels as though it's on the surface. It doesn't have a perspective, and this helps to show that in a way. And I said about the red and the blue. And then there was an article in The Guardian, which I've got a link to there, which I read ages ago, but I read it again, which is quite interesting. And about his work. So, it might not be your thing, but if you were interested in him, it's good to look a bit further. So you could try looking at that. So those artists were, but he was very keen on Matisse. And I think looking at the Red Studio and then looking at the two paintings we've seen, you can see the kind of link between the two with 50 or 60 years difference. And then we go to the next one, which is another red painting, which is one of the Howard Hodgkins like this. And he also is trying to do a different thing, a bit more, I was going to say more modern, but I think it's not much different to Patrick Heron. And he was using a kind of a slightly more conceptual way of framing his work or fixing it to the side of the painting by actually painting the frame itself. And then he created this kind of window through, which then he arranged his colours to create some kind of space, which goes backwards and forwards depending on some of the paintings. They vary, but it's mostly to do with colour up to an extent, but mostly overlap. So where you've got a colour overlapping something, whatever the colour, like this here, this is right underneath this orange frame and goes top to bottom, so it feels it completely, underneath, and this green definitely goes behind it because green is it's behind this purpley black area. Also, we've got here a downward stroke. Here, the green we've got sideways, and that helps to create a difference between the two. This blue obviously comes on top, it's overlapping. The red, you look to the side where what that's doing, it's slightly ambiguous, etc. So it's easier really with an abstract something, painting like this to kind of play with those ideas, because you're just putting colour down and trying them out almost. I'm not saying that's what he was doing, but in terms of the colour, that's what you can do. But if you were doing that with a sort of actual image, it's a more pictorial image in mind, it's harder, but it can be a way of helping yourself towards a more abstracted view, because you're concentrating more on these shapes and the overlaps and the way they're going to fit together, more on that than you are the actual exact image and where you think everything should be. So I think that kind of I think it helps perhaps to try things like this, just to kind of take one or two pieces from your imagery, like we were looking at the photographs last time and drawing from them. Take a couple of those and just see if you could make something with colour from, two little drawings that you've done, and just see what you can do. Some people, I think, were doing that last week anyway. And then we've got John Piper, who I put in because he's also got it's the structural sort of feel almost. The feel of a stage set and a flatness. This was Coventry Cathedral after being bombed. And, oh dear. And I think this one, I'll make it bigger. I think this one is actually a painting and not collage. A lot of his work also included collage. I might be wrong. But what the painting looks like, as though it is collage, it looks as though it's collage. So he's got these sections. There's a light cut or torn piece of paper with fretwork, to the window, or stencil. Maybe he did use stencil. He could well have done. But I put that in because he's got the bit of a feeling of this set, this kind of, everything's fixed to the edge. You've got the sort of sky shapes are divided up, you know, these pinnacles go right to the top, so we've got these shapes which do sit behind because this overlaps, and you've got the, you can see the blue shaders behind it. But strong and similar marks to everything else. The sky, the building, the ground is all treated in the same way in terms of the sort of robustness of the marks. The marks different. You've got quite a lot of sort of scratching and patterning and so on in some of these areas. Smudging, you know, cross-hatching with some kind of sharp implement here, cross-hatching, yellow with a brown underneath or something like that. Dotty bits, diamondy bits. That looks like a stencil. And he might have cut out a bit there and used that as a stencil. I don't know. But it was to get the feeling of the light coming through and then the dark blackened areas, etc., etc. And I never can do that. I never can get it back to making it smaller. I don't know. So I put that in really because of the kind of feel of it. It doesn't feel unlike that in many ways. Much more pictorial, and also very, you know, he's very interested in using different marks and so on to make his images, and that might appeal to some of you. And he's got lots of buildings and landscape images to look at. And then we're getting there. We're going through all the red paintings today. This one is Rothko, and I put him in because of this. I was looking at talking about the edges, and his work seems to float. He has these shapes sort of with surrounded by colour, and they have a kind of flickering, floaty sort of feel that you can't quite work out. You know, you look as though you feel as though you're looking into a pool, maybe, and then you're not, or it could be fire, it could be anything. It's just that I think they're rather wonderful to look at. Some people don't like his work much, but I do. And then we also got the layering. We've got this thin, whitish, creamy, thin, sort of almost poured area coming down over the red behind. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if that was wet paint on wet paint. It might not have been. And you can, up to a point with acrylic, do that with quite a lot of water and mediums and so on. You can do wet onto wet and get a bit of a sort of feel like that. And once again, his orange is a rectangle of orange here, sitting with a kind of reddy colour behind, and then the black coming in. And you can't really work out, you know, whether the oranges, they're on the same level, really, the black and the orange. You know, the black and which is overlapping the other, you don't know, because of this, you know, quite careful. It may just be a mark, but it's a case of choice. Your care is not so much in how long you take to make a mark, but your choice of whether to leave it or not. And he's got this wonderful feeling of the sort of smudginess at the side of this yellow, where the yellow and black join, and where the yellow bleeds into the black a bit there, just on that side. And I bet that just happened because the paint was wet or something. So I think he's worth looking at in terms of messing about with your colours and just thinking, what could I do? You could try putting paint on like that. It kind of frees you up a bit. And then I chose this. This was off the internet. I just saw it. I was looking at things, and 2021, and I thought, wow, it's a digital C-type print, whatever that is. But I just thought, gosh, you've got these weird things floating in this amazing sort of feeling of atmosphere again, a bit like the Rothkos. And I just like the way you got the translucent glazy feel, things behind, things floating on the top surface. Could it be water? What is it? And then I put it next to this because of the colours, this Picasso, which is completely, that's really flat. He was flattening those pears and dishes and so on. It was at that stage of his painting where it was all kind of one surface. And he's even got this, in fact, I'm not sure what the detail said there, next in the gallery. Let me just see. Let's see. I don't know whether I can make that big enough to see. Read it. I can. The white area behind the fruit was added as the final layer of the painting It creates a sense of space behind the pears instead of a flat background of colour. Thick that line separate, etc. To me, what it does, it gives the painting, the background and the objects, the same feeling of weight again. It's as important, this shape, this background shape, as these colours itself. It's got that same feeling of sense of being there, of being a thing in its own right. And he painted that at the end or towards the end. So he was painting round and leaving some, he was almost drawing the shapes with his background. So he was drawing the negative shapes, like these being the negative shapes with it. And in some places quite loosely, quite roughly, in others perhaps, perhaps more carefully. So I just thought they looked really good together. So I'll put those back. And then we're almost there. Here we've got Edward Middleditch, who I know little about, but I haven't put the date on, of course, 50, something like that. And I just thought, going back to the drawing in paint, rather than the big atmospheric shapes we've been looking at. And as you can see, mostly blue with a bit of orange and yellow underneath. Now, I liked this one, I'll put it in because I've done this quite a bit, to make a really bright blue summery sky. I have in the past used yellow or a peachy colour as the bottom layer, and then when that's been completely dry, I've then worked with blue scumbling on top, which I might try and show you just as part of the scumbling. And it's amazing how the blue and yellow, they're dry, they don't mix together to make green. They do this. You get this, I mean, obviously the yellow showing there, but here you still get that feeling of brightness in the whitey areas. That's with a bit of yellow in, which you wouldn't get if you were just trying to do blue on white paper. So putting the yellow in, and because the yellow's a bit orangey, it's got that, it's a warm yellow. The flecks of it that are showing are really bright and sharp, and you used to really notice them. So he's using his brush to, I don't know what this is, looks to me like a hedgerow or something like that, maybe in the winter. Said spring landscape, so before the leaves come out. And has that sort of feel of travelling across from one side to the next, and some shadow and stuff here. So areas of colour, brush marks, it's kind of quite near drawing, so I thought it would be worth putting in as a descriptive way of painting from a drawing, possibly. See what you think. And then I think this might be the last, no, it's not the last one. Paul Filer, who I don't know a lot about, but he was 1950s, 60s. He might even be, no, I don't think he's alive now, but only, fairly recently died. Two beachy landscapes. In this case, really thick. Whoops. I made that bigger than the other one. There you can see his use of paint here. Quite thick, opaque brush marks of paint, shapes, quite geometric sort of shapes, and a real looking at the geometry, the vertical, horizontal divisions and diagonal are very prominent in that piece in all ways. You've got this bit following on, and then you've got the triangle coming through here and here. Lots of golden sections. I mean, this is probably a little bit towards the middle, but we've got a sort of golden section going on here with the one division there and one division there. And then these are divided too. We've got another division here with a big shape, the big square here and the rectangle here, sideways. And then sort of a horizontal going that way. And then you could divide this one too into sections where they're all equally divided. So because of those divisions in the composition and the arrangement, even if he didn't, I mean, I don't suppose he did a pencil drawing first to do all of that. He would have just painted it, but he's worked with, shifting his things around so that they do feel right. And that's because of this the golden section, use of the golden section in it that makes it feel right. Dark over, lots of yellow, quite a quite a busy palette, but quite a lot of chromatic greys. We've got the blacky colours, the greys, and the beigey colours, if you like, all quite muted colours, and then just little bits of the blues and greens and a little bit of red there. So, and then there's another one there I just thought was quite nice. The sort of, once again, the horizontals and the verticals, very much of their time. I think that's quite a 50s sort of painting. This is the way that the lines are continued on like that, and so quite a lot of drawing in both of those. You can sort of see them coming from a drawing more easily than some paintings, I think. And then there's some, these are very contemporary. I went to Kettle's Yard in Cambridge, and there was this exhibition by this artist, a young person called Meg Rooney. And among other things, she actually painted all the walls of one gallery, which I haven't shown you, but she had these paintings, which were quite big. I put 2 meters by 1 approximately, something like that, or maybe even a bit bigger. And they were gorgeous. They were just some of them, they were all lovely actually. And they were just this free mark making, abstracted, pond or whatever it was. You just, in the end, I don't know how much it was to do with that or not. Lots of different directions of her brush strokes, and then the richness of the paint. She's got up here veils of drips, terpsy kind of sheen coming down with the dribbles coming down, layers of colour there, and that's sort of behind. And then these drawn marks, which if you go quite big with your scale, you can use a brush quite easily to do these sorts of marks. It's harder on a smaller scale with a brush because they look too big. You can use oil pastel and marker pens and things these days. But then she's done lots of wet on wet so that the colours are smudging and merging, but she's not overdoing it so you don't lose the colour. And has just left, probably got yellow on her brush and put it on the blue, and most of it's gone green, and she's left the bits that are yellow, so it's quite free and made as you paint, not planned. So thinking about it. And then she's got these horizontal brush marks smudging things together that way, and then some this way, so you get this merging of the colours. I think the main thing with her work is she's been very good about not going too far with it. I don't know how much scraping off she might do, but it all looks quite fresh to me. And then these lovely marks could well have been done with well, in this case, an oil bar or something, I don't know. But I just thought that they were lovely in their freshness, and to look at and think, gosh, this idea of this sort of possible pond or something with the marks going both ways, some smudgy, some not so, is would be well worth having a go at if you were doing some water of some sort, thinking, who could I look at to inspire me to do something like that? And then this was another one which I also liked, make it bigger again, same size. And the colours were rather good. Because green's not always that easy, but this sort of maroony red and the green worked well, and the yellow. And that was a bit less pictorial than the other one. So looking at it closely, once again, there's lots of these smudgy horizontal and vertical brush marks, leaving some of the, putting yellow on top of the purple and melding it together, but leaving some bright, and lots of little flicky sort of drawn marks left in or put in afterwards. Not a lot, but just enough to give it a sort of a bit of a focal point, if you like. Some of these lines and these drips, really they play a big part in that painting, I think. I like this bit down here. So she's I haven't looked back and seen what else she's done, but I do like that series. And then I just chose this one. This was an internet find. No, it wasn't. It was a gallery in Yorkshire that I looked at. And she did lots of paintings, some I liked quite a lot. And I put it in because it was an example of whatever it was, these buildings she was after. She then painted out a bit like the Matisse Red Studio, all of this sort of flat blue, leaving the shapes. And I thought it was quite interesting and might be interesting to some of you. in that sort of Matisse way. I don't know whether it's that as interesting, but anyway, I quite liked it. So it was just something else to look at. And this over and the overpainting, even just thinking, well, I'm just painting over things. The way you use your brush and your marks is part of it. Now, the marks that you can see are whatever was underneath, which looks to me as though it might be collage or just thick paint. I don't know. I have to look a bit further. So the paint on top, it was probably quite easy just to paint on top, going round, yes, round the shapes and keeping it nice and thick, because those marks of the collage did the work, if you like. So you get this crisscrossy effect, which has been quite direct with the brush, just sort of quite straight and quite, not fiddling round. The colour's very even as it goes round. So I think that's what I mean by things looking more finished than if you were kind of rather carefully with a small brush going round. I'm not suggesting that you would, but it can look as though you've been carefully going round there with a small brush, whereas this is really quite nice and big and bold, and it works from that point of view, I think. Right, so now, going at it a bit fast here. Oh gosh, I thought I nearly finished. Oh, you can read that later on. It's something that she said. It was on her website about painting, which I thought was quite nice. Diebenkorn, I think quite a few do. You all, I don't know if you all do know Diebenkorn, but he did a big series in the last section of his painting life called the Ocean Park series. Only called Ocean Park because it was a part of Los Angeles or wherever he lived. It was called that, and it was these abstract shapes which I think might come from big open studio areas with Velux windows, glass and so on, but I'm not sure. But he paints. He does something which I wish I did. Mine are too fussy. These big areas of fairly sort of, well, not monochrome, but just sort of quite open ended. And then his detail, his drawing-y bits, smaller sections are concentrated more in one area. And I just like that balance of the shape, not all busy. Like where he does that, and the way that the colours are introduced with just tiny little bits of it. And these very sharp lines, I like that, with the quite, painterly quality of the rest of the work. So these are quite big, and you can see the sort of overlaying of quite a few colours there. It's not just one colour. And then bits that he's got a bit of a building shape there, and it's semi-painted out, but not entirely painted out. And then these bits that kind of echo each other. And quite a lot of it's painted out actually in here. So he's somebody else to look at for those qualities. And then we've got William Scott, that some of you will know. Did a lot of work from still lives through to a lot of life painting. And I put here as a composition, this could be looked at as an exercise in positive and negative space in the same way as one might view a Henry Moore sculpture. So you might look at one of those, and it's all about the space. It's about the form and the gaps in between as being an important part. The shape in here and the shape in here as you go around in 3 dimensions. And that one there, in the way this links together with that and creates this shape in here. So this is similar, although it's 2 dimensions, and he was on his way to abstracting his still lives, and he's moving with, merging a bit like the Milton Avery with the 2 people sitting with their in the room, flat colours. These blacks are merging into the brown here, and then we've got the different amounts of very bright to not very obvious. Something's going off the edge. This shape, sort of tabletop, that's upended, and these are sideways, so he's playing with all that kind of thing to create something that is aesthetically pleasing to him at the time, so what he wanted to try and do. So I'm just going to go bigger on that one too, just to look. Because when you go really close, what's that? When you go really close, you can see the paintwork. It seems very, very free, quite simple, really. Just he's got this sort of shape and he's painted it flat. He hasn't tried to make it look, so it's got volume. And he's been very particular about the space in between, and the fact that that's joined is meant, and that's a bigger space. And this one's got a bit of white showing, for whatever reason. And here you can barely see that one, and there's a space there. You can see he's moved this one or that one a bit. You can see a shape bit there that's been painted out, but not quite. It's been left. And a lot of his paintings are like that. You can just see where he's budged things up a bit. It looks lighter there, around there. That must have been bigger at one time. And it looks as though his paint's fairly dryish. You can sort of see the sort of edges of the marks and the way that they stumble along the edge there. They don't, it's not a smooth line, unlike some of the others, and so on. So he was very much after the compositional element and then the balance of the lights, darks, medium tones, and taking his imagery from cups and other vessels. But in the end, he just used, he just used abstract forms. They weren't to do with cups and so on in the end. That's what he was doing there. And that is the end of those. But then I move on to some examples of some of my students' work and some of mine. And although I won't show you too much of mine here, because I'm going to show you some later on. How can I make, let's go smaller. Oh, go away. I'm going to show you a bit, because I don't have them all in reality. This is one of my students at Sunnywell. I like what she's been doing, and we were doing this cutting up drawings thing that some of you did with me for the first part of this course, the first 2 weeks, and we did a bit of last time, but not so much. And this was 4 pieces of drawing from still life actually, originally, and then she's put them together. And then she hasn't drawn from that, but she's got several paintings that were based around this sort of thing. She might have started like that. And this one she ended up finishing with, which she liked and I liked as well. And I'm just putting them in because I just like the way she's sort of very freely, put this lighter red on the darker red there, and she sort of looked at the darks and decided she likes it. And she was starting off with these, so I thought it might be interesting to you because you've been starting off with drawings as well. And then here's another one. And in this one, she had this was one piece, but she cut it a piece off, cut one end of it off and swapped them over. And because it wasn't going right for her, I think this was on this end here. Oh, she didn't think it was going right for her. And then when she put them together, you get a surprise actually. You get this wonderful kind of rejigging of it sometimes. And sometimes you then want to carry on with it. And I personally, I do this quite a lot, and then I go and spoil it all by carrying on and making it all merged into one again. I think this is really nice with the black and the white contrast in the middle there. With this line, I think it balances out really well. And so it's all about, like the William Scott, the aesthetic feel of the balance of these different shapes and the different colours. And then I put, these are the ones I don't have anymore, but so I've done quite a lot of these paintings from pretty much the photographs I showed you last time of mine. These were on 2 boards, and I painted on this one and this board and this board, at times on different sides. I didn't paint them together. I painted them together, but then I would swap one over to the other side. I might turn one over and leave the other right, and then carry on painting. In the end, it works as a painting. But you get a bit like in Isabel's and the previous slide, you get this division here where they don't work across each other. And I felt that worked well like that, as being another kind of rejigged, a kind of another glimpse of the view that way, the view that way. And then this does follow through, but not quite. So that was one, I did several of these, and that was one example. I've got another one to show you in real life, although it's not quite the same place. So that was one of mine, and then here's another one the same, to give you a bit of an idea as to, and then I'm going to show you another piece where I've cut it up and swapped it over. As to what I was after was not something that's then you continue and make it the same, because then if you do that, well, that's fine. Actually, it's a way of doing it. You could make it the same. But I just quite like the fact you've got this rejigging of the view. So it's the same place, but not quite the same glance, if you like. And then I'm going to do this quite quickly, this next bit, because we'll do it properly after we have a break and then do it. This is the some photographs of Norfolk coast. These trees I used quite a bit, and this sort of water and so on, and the colours. And I'll show you a bit more, but I then did this, which I'll show you, which is a collage. And I was just trying to get the feeling of some of those photographs using pieces of paper, really, colours. I was just sort of thinking of getting a swatch of colours out. I then did put in a few shapes, a bit like trees. And it took me ages, much longer than it looked, really, to sort of do what I thought was all right. Then I thought I'm going to copy this. So I tried copying it on this. This is actually the same size as that. And it wasn't working. It looked really wooden. I did more or less copy it. I really measured it. So I thought, oh, this will be an exercise in trying. And you can sort of see the yellow here and the yellow here, square up there and so on. You can see sort of some of the similarities. And once I'd done that, I then didn't like it. You know, it wasn't working. It was just, this was much nicer. It was just much more free and this was very wooden. I then turned this round and carried on painting and made a painting out of it, which was the same place. It was exactly what I wanted. But because I turned it round, I then had the yellow shapes and so on in different places. And then I went back to my tree shapes and painted them in and started working on it from that point of view. So that was a really good starting point. And I'll show you a different painting I've done a similar thing with. I don't have this one anymore. It was actually a bit brighter than it looks like here. And it was just worth doing that exercise at the beginning, even though it wasn't going to be a straight copy. I think that's what I'm trying to say, is you don't have to copy your paper drawing, your collage, your pencil drawing, but you need to use it. And so once I got going, I then started thinking all about how can I make this area here sort of tree-like undergrowth and that sort of thing, and still keep some quite big shapes that looking perhaps out back to the sea or onto the shore or whatever it might be, looking at various drawings and photographs I've got. So that one ended up being quite successful in my view. And I started off like that, like the collage. And then there's that painting like that. And then I went on, this is some other, a whole load of same images, those trees painted onto sheets of paper. And I'm showing you this because I haven't got these anymore, but I've got some work I've done from them. And some of you did this in the first couple of sessions that we did. Painting sheets of A4, printer paper or something like that you can collage, and then painting on them from your drawing sketches. In this case, it was the trees. Last week, we were looking at the photographs and you were doing bits of your buildings or landscapey bits that were on your photographs. In my case, it was often that wiggly path and some white buildings and various things like that. This is doing it in colour, so you might hold that in mind as a possible way of starting. And then I went on to this, which I will be showing you, and the painting here, which I will be showing you, and I think that's it, because these are the other things that we're looking at. Yes, the rest is just for your reference later on. So I'm going to stop that share there. That was an awful lot to take in. So you might want to go and get a cup of coffee or something. And then I'm going to show you that, show you the just go back to the drawings I showed you to begin with last week, the beach ones with the drawings and so on. I've got some work I'm still working on from that, and I thought I'd just show you the group of the work that I'm working on sort of simultaneously with lots of gaps in between when I'm doing things like this today and other things. And so it's ongoing, and I thought it's just quite nice to see, if you go into somebody's studio, art weeks or something, or any other time, and you see a group of pieces that have some relation to each other and they're not finished. It's quite nice just to see, you understand somebody's mind perhaps a little bit more. So I thought I'd show you those, and then we'll look at some of the textury bits, and I'm going to do a bit of then practical, sort of putting the paint on as a demonstration, which I'm never so good at, but I'll try. And which I hope might help afterwards. And then you can have some time to go on and see what you can do. Is that all right? That sound okay? Should we have a because the next section will be quite long as well. So it's 22:11. If we start again at 11, have a 20-minute break now. Start again at 11. So you could always go back if you wanted to go back over the slides and read some of the stuff or have a think, just sort of dwell on it, or just go and do something else, and then come back at 11, and then it'll be a longish session after that, and then there'll be time for you to do something as well. So I'll stop recording now, if I can work out how to do it. No, not there. What's that? Put something in. We can get going. Sorry, Chris, are you there? No.
So why aren't I showing?
Is that Chris?
Yes.
Have you got your video thing?
Well, no, but it's on.
It's on. That's very
Oh,
strange. I wonder why that is. Uh,
I've got two layers of video symbols, one that's actually the one on Jane's screen and one that's mine, which is lower down.
oh,
oh, thank you. Yes, that's it. Voila.
now we can just see you, which is great. I don't know how we change that. I'll just remove pin. What's that? Oh, there we go. I don't know how that works. Okay. So now I'm going to change to the other camera. I really wish I had a zoom camera that you could, zoom in and out, because I'd have to do lots of moving it around manually. So I thought I'd start with just an image, which I kind of got it showing the kind of group of work in one go, just as a sort of starter. Then I'll mess about and move it. So share. Oh dear, where's the not see it, there it is. Second camera. Right. So there we have one of the drawings at the top here, going off the top a bit. Colour's not brilliant, but it's a bit bleached out, but never mind. There's one of the drawings that I did where I've overlapped one and another. You can just see it there. And then this was one of the collage together bits of drawing that I did after I'd done all the small drawings. And that was one I quite liked, so I thought I'd work from. This was a piece of work. I'm going to show you a better image on the course. So that was the last couple of days when we got into painting. That's got the division down there, as you can see, quite loose. I was in course mode as opposed to being at home in fiddling mode. And then they're very bleached out, and I hope they look better when I turn them around. Two paintings. This is the most abstract. Actually, I'm glad I've left it because I really quite like it for different reasons. I'll show you. And this one I've spent ages on, and it oscillates between being all right and not all right. This is much bigger. So I'm now going to
Jane, can't tell which one is this because we're looking at your big screen and you're touching things on your screen, and
of course you are. Yeah, of course you are. Okay, so I'm going to go and do that now properly so that you can see me doing it. Just so sorry, I mean, that's me being silly. You should have said before. So
I was trying to guess. It was quite good fun.
Yeah.
So was I.
I'll do it again. What I realizes is the colour is very bleached out, and I quite like the colour to look. It might be when I move the camera, it might be a bit better. I can't really turn the lights out because I think it'll all be too dark. I could just try. I'll try some of the lights out. No. What does the colour look like now?
Fine.
Better.
Yeah,
Better. Okay, I'll leave it like that. I've got some lights on the other side, but not. Oh, that's a bit better. Right, okay. This up here is the drawing that I did when I was on the course, and I showed it to you last week. There's two drawings put together.
Hmm.
So that was one of the several drawings I did, but I quite like that one. And I liked the kind of blocking of the dark here and sort of the zigzaggy coming down here in the sky and so on. So that was what I quite liked about it. And then I did this drawing here, which I'll bring that one close up there, which was the kind of collage together drawing, which took some of those elements. It's quite linear. There's the darks and the lights aren't particularly well planned, I don't think. It's in some places it's all right. So I wasn't going to really copy it exactly, and I thought I liked enough about the divisions and the horizontals and the verticals and the swirly bits to think I might make something of that or use it for something. When I was on the course itself, I did this painting, which I do actually quite like because it's much looser than a lot of the things I do at home. And I might bring the camera closer to this one in a minute, but as you can see, it's actually it's brighter than it looks on that screen there, on my screen anyway. But it's definitely got that block of dark. And I haven't been too finicky about I've got the feeling of the drawing of it without it being a bit precious, a bit kind of overworked. So I've got it really quite sloppy. And in doing that, I did have the left-hand panel, the smaller one, on the other. I can't get this to go straight. On the other side. And then when I cut it, and it just the balance didn't seem to be right. And I decided I would chop it off and put it on the other side and just see what happened. And I'm pretty sure I turned it around and it was the other way up. And then I turned it back again and turn it around again and, carried on working. So it's got quite a mixture of moving around, muddling around, turning things over, swapping them over, which is what I was doing with those works on boards, the coastal ones that I showed you a couple of earlier. Quite a lot, and I quite like that way of working, and it might suit some of you. And it suits Isabel, the person whose work I showed earlier on the screen. So, I was quite happy with that. Much more daring in a way in terms that it was loose.
it's lovely, Jane. I love
I
it.
often manage, yeah. And I would like to kind of get back to being daring, but it's quite hard. So, that's that one. And then I'm going to come with the camera and come a bit closer to the other two, because they've got the kind of textured bits on that might be quite useful to look at. And we can talk about a bit further. I've also got, before I'm going to move the camera anyway, so I'm going to move this just to look at my table where I've got everything I'm going to be using. And I just pulled out of my box these colours, thinking I'm just going to look and see what colours did I use for my paintings. And, give or take, the 3 paintings I've got here, we're using this sort of range of colours. And it's just quite nice to do that. Either you can do it before or while you're working. You might have started using some of them and thought, well, I wonder whether pink will work, whether it would go with it. And you could try it like that. Or whether purple will, or whether it would be better without the purple, or you can fiddle about with the colours like that. And I quite like doing that from time to time.
Jane, are those pure colours out of the tube, or have you mixed any of them?
No, they'll be mixed. Mostly they'll be mixed because I've done these for other reasons. I've got a whole box full. Some of them have got the codes on the back, which I've forgotten what the code means now.
It's a really good idea.
But they are all mixed. I mean, I started off doing lots and lots of these, all just from red, blue, and yellow, of different sorts of red. Two different reds, 2 different yellows, and 2 different blues, doing them as sets, so you can see exactly what you can get just from those colours. Subsequently, and most of these will be that. Subsequently, I have done a few others that were not quite that, I think, but mostly they are from just the red, blue, and yellow. So that's an interesting thing to think about as well. So that's quite nice when you're sort of, you might get your colours down and think, well, I quite like this. Then think, well, I don't really know, what would it be better with less yellow, or I don't know, or what colour shall I do that? Is that those sort of questions? If you perhaps did this task, so you started collecting your squares and then try putting them together and just sort of fiddling with those. You can think about quantity too. In mine, I've got quite a lot of orange and red, so you could kind of put all of those out. And a fair amount of blue as well. And I can put that out and that blue there. And maybe quite a small amount of dark. So you can sort of you can get the balance right of the amounts of colour you've got as well. And then you might decide, you can put some brown in there, but not, how much brown would it be nice to have quite a lot of it, maybe? What about the pink? Shall I have quite a lot of that? It might all be too much. So maybe just a slither of pink would look better. So you're going to hide a bit and play around with the quantities as well. And I think that's really useful. And certainly if you eventually have all the colours or have a box full that you do every now and again, these are about 10 centimetre squares, I think. You've got them ready. You don't have to keep repainting them. You can pull them out and think, well, I like that, but I haven't got a very good yellow. I'm going to do a different yellow or something like that. So that's that. But
What have you done? What sort of surface is that? Are they just on paper?
They're on a kind of card-like paper, thick paper or thin card. Something that you can pick up and isn't going to go all flimsy. It's got some body to it. And they are mostly 6 by 10 by 10, but they're not all, as you can see. If they are all the same, it's quite useful. And I do sometimes put on the back. I've got CG there. That means chromatic grey. But of course, I don't know the relevance of that really now. So that's that. I'm going to turn this round and look first at the let me just think. I know I'm going to look first at the one I did on the course, because that's the sort of first one, if you like. For a bit of texture and stuff, but not now. Just move this up. And let me just move that up. Oh, and let's move this down. Right. Once again, I'm not really sure about this colour at all. Hoping once I've got this done, it won't be so. Right, that's not so bad. I'll go a bit closer to look at some bits. Right, I think really what I'm just going to show you this time is not a lot really, but just that it's very loose. So this dark area, this sort of area here, there. I've drawn these with a brush, these groiny things with this sort of shape, onto a surface that would have been this pink underneath and possibly some red underneath, I don't know. Not quite sure, possibly mostly this sort of colour. And then I've drawn them and put the things on and sort of thought, oh, it's, and I really wasn't sure. It was all quite rough and quite messy. And this, I think, is not quite sure what this is. Certainly the thin lines were there. And then when it was dry, and I kind of carried on painting the rest of it, and I came back to this, and I really wanted to, I got the red in here, and I got the orange, and but this was still, didn't really have the impact I wanted. And I put this thin layer, I think there was orange underneath there, or red. I put a thin layer of this magenta, very thin layer, this magenta pink over there. You can just about sort of see the edge of it, tracing with my finger there. And that just sort of stained the whole lot. So the reds in there already came out really vibrantly. And the pink kind of stop the blacky, dark, bluey colour looking too, I don't know, too dark or too strong somehow. And it unified this whole shape. And that's what I was really after, was shapes. And I was pleased with that. It's quite rough, but it somehow did the trick more than just having the drawing on the layer below and on the layer below. I then put this thin glaze on, and I think that glazing idea in lots of areas works very well. And I will try and show you that in a more abstract form, just to remind you that it's something that's, you know, when things aren't looking quite right, sometimes just a block of glaze, which it's not for anything in its own right, but it changes what's underneath it. And also it does this unification thing, this sort of unifying, which I think works quite well. I think this mark here, which is quite pale and looks quite translucent, so it probably was. I think that was printed off a piece of paper. So what I might have done is blotted something. Not quite sure what I was blotting, but blotting some of that maybe, that might have been wet, and then blotting it onto that. So it's a bit like a printing technique. And I can't tell you where I got this blot from, but it's wet paint blotted and then blotted straight directly onto another surface. And I don't know, it must have been pretty wet because I was using acrylic, and I don't think I had any retarder with me at the time, or if I did, I don't know if I was using it. If you were using retarder, so the paint stays wet for longer, that is quite a thing that you can do because the paint won't have dried. And it's quite loose. You don't know what the mark's going to look like, but I've used it on the other painting too, I'm going to show you. And I think this idea of keeping things open for as long as possible without being too precious, doing something like that is quite helpful. Other areas to look at, as you could look at, are, you know, these marks here. This is wet paint with dry paint underneath, probably this purpley color underneath here. And that's just with a palette knife. That's just a scribbled mark, trying to emulate a feeling of drawing with a knife, taking off the wet paint off the top, and you get actually a really nice line, which is a bit like a drawn line. If you can get, with this, I think it was the tip of a palette knife. You can use different tools. I will show you this, but just now, this squeegee. These are quite smart things. You could use a credit card thing or bits of card and all sorts. This is particularly nice. It's silicone, and it's rubbery, and it cleans very easily, and it's also got this really lovely edge to it that you can do this kind of mark with, and it's very sort of smooth, apart from other things you can do with it. So that's the kind of tool I would use for that. And it's worth kind of practicing this sort of thing so that it's fluid and you can get really nice lines with whatever tool you are using. I then got some bits from the drawing. I was just looking at the you can sort of see these are little dotty bits here, and that came from the drawing, and I just put those on to sort of link up the two areas, the darks and so on. And then what else can I show you on this? Probably not much else. One other thing which keeps it looser is this upright, this thing here you find at the sea with a kind of cage thing on top. It's a marker thing for I don't know, but when the tide's in, I suppose you can see where these groins are. And I like putting this sort of thing in, but I don't necessarily want it all to look too precise on a painting like this. It needs to kind of fit in, you know, with the sort of, you want the whole thing to be abstracted to the same sort of amount. Although having said that, I showed you the paintings of Jeremy Gardner last week, and Jeremy Gardner often does have some very specifically painted bits in his paintings, and then other bits that are much more abstract. So you don't have to, you know, you can have the two things together. But in this case, I wanted to kind of keep this in here, but sort of slightly obliterate it. So as you can see, I painted over the line here a bit. You can see it there, but it's just following through. And I've got a kind of image of it without it being too obvious. So that's that one. The next one, or another one, I was starting the big one, the very big one, when I was on the course. It's got hundreds of layers on it. It wasn't working very well. So I then try this one, which I'm just going to bring that one up a little bit. There, and come back so you can just see it a wee bit first. I can get that to, that gives you a sort of idea of it. Now, what I didn't know that I was after before I did it, but actually I'm going to bring that up without having to hold it because I'll just wobble it all the time. Right. What I was doing with that one was working from that abstractive drawing that I'd done, and I was sort of planning the drawing out and trying to get everything in the right place. So there's the drawing with its different divisions, and I was trying those on here. I was sort of marking it out with some kind of influence, probably an oil pastel or something like that, and then drawing in the rough shapes. I think possibly blue. I've got quite a lot of blue in there, so I might have done it with the blue, and that was an oil pastel. And then I started painting patches in, using these colours, which I decided I wanted to use. And as I was using them, I was thinking, gosh, I love this really bright orange. And I was working on, and I think the surface has got something to do with it. I was working on this, it's this board you can buy with a sort of, hang on, it looked like that on the back, sort of MDF-y type board with a frame thing attached. And I'd painted gesso on it, white gesso, acrylic gesso. And then I sanded the surface down, done another layer and sanded it down. So I had a much better surface, or much smoother, dense surface really than I normally would have or bother with. And I actually really liked the way the acrylic sort of slid more on that surface. Normally I quite like having the tooth that you get with the gesso. It's a slightly rough surface. But on this case, I really enjoyed the smoothness of it. And what that gave me when I was overlaying this, I think I had some blue in there, and I was really, really risky with this patch here, which is very thin, and it's the same blue as that, I think, but much thinned down. And I sort of swirled it over the top of this when this was dry. But some of the bits were wet. I think it was using oil, and this is oil pastel, so the pastels sort of smudged a bit. And it really gave this feeling of water. It was the smudginess, but also the fact that it was very flat and smooth that gave it this sort of feel. And I started then thinking, gosh, what I really quite like is this feeling of this watery feeling over this image, which is really quite abstract. You see little bits of things, but it's quite busy. It's got quite a lot in it. And I was thinking I wasn't really sure what to do with it with all these shapes. And then I quite liked this because it was forgetting about all the individual shapes and it was kind of pulling it together and it gave it this watery feel. So far so good. And I don't really know quite now whether that is it or whether I might do some more to it. But I think trying out, I mean, there's no right way of, or right decision to make for your surface, but trying out a more slippery surface or a rougher surface is worth doing because they are different and they don't behave in the same way. Now this was with oil, but I think acrylic with medium in it is just as slippery and slidey. In fact, actually, I say it was with oil. I think the orange, the initial color I put down was acrylic. I started off with acrylic and then moved on to oil afterwards. So I think possibly this might have been acrylic as well. I'm not entirely sure. Coming in closer to it, if I can do that, let me just see if I'll bring that down. Go a bit closer. A bit closer again. I've got these drawn bits here, which I quite like. Quite like that. I quite like the little bits of drawing for the various posts and various sort of scribbly bits. There are some quite strong uprights which come from the sort of structure I showed you before, or also a flagpole, which I think there's some bits here, some of a flag flying out originally with a kind of straight down there, but you don't really, only I would know that. But some of these divisions are to do with the uprights that were in the area that I was in, you know, the structures that were there. And so these divisions follow those as sort of dividing up this beachscape. And I really just liked the variation, the difference between looking at these marks with the swirly sort of marks there, mostly drawn on one or two scratched bits, as I sort of showed you before. And then the other bit on this that is probably worth looking at is here. I don't know if you can see in here, but there are some very thin little marks. Can you see those at all, or is it not possible?
Yeah.
Yes, can see them.
Very kind of wiggly marks, and that's just done with a palette knife, I think, or something like that. But that came straight from one of my drawings, which was looking at the ripples in the sand when the tide went out. The sand was all very like that, with bits of water and bits of, and I was taking bits from the more specific areas of drawings, not just the big shapes, and I quite like that too. So all in all, it's got quite a lot of different bits from the scene that was there. But I was trying to, for once in my life anyway, make it much more to do with the feel of this thing as an object and all this sort of on it, rather than any kind of view of the place I was in. And I think that's achieved it more than some of the other paintings. So that's what, you know, that's where that is. And I think
Was
the blue,
Jane,
Yeah.
was the red drawing part done with the oil pastel?
I think this is an oil pastel. I
Yeah.
do have oil bars, they're known as, but this is pastel.
It looks very free and spontaneous.
Yes,
It must,
yeah.
yeah.
And I think with oil pastel, if you're leaving the painting out like this without any glass on, which I would do, I probably need to think, what am I going to do with that? Because oil pastel's not stable. I mean, I could scratch that off with my finger if I wanted to. So what I will do is either put a coat. I can't put acrylic medium on it. I've got some stuff called cold wax, which I'm going to smear a very thin layer on, and you won't see it. It's just so opaque, and it's translucent once it's dry.
What's it called?
Well, it's cold wax, and people use this
Cold wax. Yeah.
wax. It's
Yeah.
not, they mix it with paint and use it for painting. I tend to use it quite a bit for sort of surfaces. I might mix some color into it sometimes. Sometimes it's just to fill in the ridges on the surface when you've got lots of ridgy bits.
Yeah.
But also what it does, it'll dry and it'll keep this, it'll make this stable so it won't come off.
Don't oil pastels eventually dry quite hard though, permanent?
Well, they are quite hard, but you just, all you have to do is get a bit of terps on your
Okay.
on, and they wouldn't go again. So
Yeah.
they're not hard like oil paint is.
No.
But yes, I mean, it's not going to come off very easily, but if I was going to sell it or something, I would.
Yeah.
So that's that one. And then the final one of that sort of set is this rather big one, which I am actually still struggling with. I don't actually think it's let's get this on there first. I've got to go up for that one. Up a bit. Oh, now which way do I go now? No. I've got to go up. Should be able to go up a bit more. No, I can't. I have to hang on. I'll take it off the wall and put it on the easel. Right. That's a bit better. You can't really see the whole thing very easily, but you saw it before a bit.
Jane, that is just so amazing.
Well, I don't think it is that amazing, really.
To me, it is.
Well, you can't quite see the whole thing. more or less it. Yeah, well, part of it I do like it, but partly I'm not sure about. Some of it I think is a bit fussy. But what I do want to show you is more the individual bits, so that they might be helpful in terms of just making the marks, and then we'll do the marks themselves. So here, this area here is, as you can see, let me just make that go down a bit. Quite a lot. This is, fairly late on in the stages when you've got everything sort of more or less placed. I've got a little bit of, I'll show you that later on. You can't really see it. This here is dribbles, really. It's very, very thin paint. And I've put it, I think I've probably put my brush and, just load the brush with the thin paint and sort of press it on, and it'll dribble down, and then you can blot it at certain stages. And if you have this whole area quite wet, it'll sort of spread out. Once again, to get this veiled feeling, a sort of, in this case, watery veiled feeling. And also in a painting that's very much a bit of a landscape looking backwards, I wanted to kind of bring it more to this kind of object idea, so that the surface quality was as important as the view, if you like. And doing this kind of veiling helps that, because this isn't a perspectival, mark that fits in with this as a landscape going backwards. It's a surface thing, but it sort of somehow starts to bring it together a bit, I think. So that sort of idea of working like that on top of other painting that you've got. This has got many layers and been upside down and the other way around at different times. And a lot of it was quite heavy and I didn't like it, but bits have been, some of this is quite old, some of this is from ages ago, and then with more painting on top to soften it all, and I've kept that. And then this, you can't see that, I'll come back to that, sorry. Now I'm going to go to the right, and there's more of that, more of that, using a brush to kind of, using a palette knife to flick the top coat off and get the underneath colour coming through with those bits there. And that's also from the drawing that I've got there. And then this bright patch here, which I do quite like, that's also got quite a lot of different reds, in fact, different brush marks going different directions. And it's quite, I was trying to get a real frisson between this and the blues, the sort of real brightness. In fact, the reality is a bit pinker than the screen looks very orange to me, but this is quite pink as it happens. And I then go further to the right, and there's more of this, in this case, not so much a dripping, but brush marks, very thin. But the Constable, I've just been looking at the Constable when I was doing those slides, and I thought, well, I want some nice brush marks over the top of my, let me bring this down, if it will, there, over the top of my surface here, to sort of give this feeling of water, and once again on the surface of the canvas of the frame, as opposed to being a perspectival thing, is a surface thing, that. And then going up to that busy bit up here, which was the groins and things. This is what I'm not sure about, but I'll just leave it for a bit and see. I have got a division. I have more divisions in this. There's one down there. I can see the edge there, but it's all become more one picture now. This has gone through lots of incarnations. It's had, I haven't quite got the shape that I have in the drawing on this. I kind of wanted it to be more sort of going down and coming up again, and I haven't quite got that. And it's been quite heavy, and then I blocked it out because I thought it was too heavy, and then I haven't been quite sure about it. But what I have got is a lot of layers of the brush, very thin paint over the top surface over here. And then yesterday, it's still wet, these pinky whitey bits here are a bit like when I talked about the printing on the other piece. This is where I, what did I do? I put a piece of paper, a piece of brown, quite thick brown paper that was a bit crumbled up, crunched up. And I placed that on the palette, which had this thin white pink paint on it. It was on a glass surface. Pressed it on. The paper picked up some of the paint and not others, and then just pressed it on that about twice. And it gave me this blotchy, blobby, liney sort of thing. Like I pressed it down with my finger on the top. So it was an arbitrary, I didn't know what it would make, but I thought it would somehow block out this rather, I don't know, make the whole thing more cohesive was the aim, I suppose. And I don't know whether it's done that or not, but that's what that is. And it's quite nice to try that sort of printing idea at the same time as painting. And then other areas, going up a little bit more up here, the sky's been quite different over periods of time. And I had this horizon was once much stronger, but I decided I wanted to really bring it together more and have more of a one color here. So I painted over this pink here more than once with very thin color just to get that veiled sort of feeling again, and then brought that down the side, right down the side there like that. So I was thinking about the thing as a whole. I was thinking about different marks. Here's some cloud marks from all of the drawings. And I've also put in, which is quite pictorial really, but the posts of the wind turbines that you can see lots of down there. And all together, it's the pinks and the oranges and the browns and so on. I showed you in those coloured squares that I was working on. So that one, I'm not sure whether it's too busy, too fussy. That's my feeling, but I'm not sure about that. But I am pleased with some of the marks in there, the variety and some of the and the colours as well. So, you know, you can look at it in more than one way.
Can you take the camera back again to see the whole thing?
Yeah, yeah. Oops.
I think the colours are lovely, really lovely.
Yeah.
There you can see it more mostly.
I mean, for me, the business would be really, really good if it wasn't quite so separated from the rest of it. And just that vertical line for me would need to be a bit kind of managed.
What, as in strongly, you mean, or less?
Less strongly.
Less strong. Well, there's all those things to think about.
Yeah, I mean, you could start with that and do 1,000 amazing pictures from it.
Well, I might do. Quite like to carry on because I've also got all the drawings, so I can pick out different ones to bring something new into it. And I kind of want to be daring with this and really kind of perhaps remove, you know, I don't know really. I'll see. I'll have to just wait and see what it's been going for ages, and I thought, well, I'm not going to ruin it, but neither do I want to be very precious and think I can't do that because it's going to spoil it and then never really like it, you know.
Yeah.
I think one thing I was thinking about yesterday, and I did change the color a bit, was that it had sort of rather equal quantities of the orange, which actually in real life is a bit stronger than it looks like on the screen, my screen anyway. Orange and the blue seem to be quite equal, and I thought, what would it look like if I had less orange and more neutral colors, blues and, you know, pale colors? What would it look like if I had more darks? Because if you take a black and white picture, that is mostly middle grey with some little bits of dark, not much, etc., etc. You know, so I don't know. So the next thing I was going to show you is the making of the marks, and then I think I'll show you what might end up being the last thing actually, which is the collage work that I did. So the making of the marks. Let me just see. I've got here. So I've already mentioned a bit about the gesso and the slippery, slidey surface, or as opposed, well, and not as opposed to, but and the more textured, rough thing. And one thing you can do is on that I sanded it. Sorry, getting this wrong. I've got those as well. This here has got gesso on it, acrylic gesso, and I've just this morning did sand that side down, that half side. That's smoother than that side. It's not much different because it's just very ordinary paper, and I've just painted it on. And then this one here is, it might be gessoed, it might not be, but it's got acrylic on it, just this color. Thought I'd try things on that. And these two here, I just was messing about really, because I taped on, so I stretched 2 magazine or catalogue pages. This one actually is where the centre bended, so it's a bit lumpy there because it didn't go flat. And this has got a kind of thick modelling paste, sort of type of gesso on it that you can either mix into the paint or you could put on underneath. So I've just left it quite rough here, and we'll put the paint on top of that. And here it's put on with a palette knife. It's quite smooth with thick and thin bits, and that's just a thin brush mark. So I quite like the idea of just having the faded bits of what was on the magazine pictures as a starting point. I mean, you won't see those in the end, I don't suppose, but it actually stops you having a white background. And maybe you just use the chance fact that you've got these divisions, you know, maybe that might come into it.
So were they glossy pages in the magazine?
They weren't really. They were a catalogue. They were one of those clothes catalogues that has quite kind of muted matte surfaces. I don't know, it's kind of the thing nowadays.
So it took the gesso, okay.
Yeah, it just sits on quite well.
Yeah.
And
Jane,
yes.
sorry, could you just explain how you stretch it? I know it's a basic question, but could you just explain how you do that?
Yes, it depends what you're doing. If you're just doing magazine pages, for example, they're quite thin and you wouldn't really want to get them soaking wet beforehand. So I just laid the magazine page on, and I'm just trying to think what order did I do it on. I cut the tape first to fit around there. When I say you cut it first, it's because if you get your reel of tape, I'll show you the tape actually. Where is it? It's, well, it was always known as gum strip when I was at college. I don't know if they call it that now, but it looks like that. It's paper. You used to use it for parcels in the old days, and it's gummed on one side. If you mess about with it with wet hands, you end up getting wet all the way down here, and it tears. It just, you know, it doesn't last. So my advice is always to cut it first before you start doing any watery bits. So then what I did was I'll take a piece of this and I'll just I'll have a bowl of water and a sponge or a cloth or something, a piece of kitchen towel, and I'll just run the damp kitchen towel down that on the gum side, and then stick it down. So I'll start from the middle and go out and do this quite fast. And this could be dry paper when it's as thin as this. I think with this I might have then wetted it with a wet kitchen towel. I just wetted it and then let it dry. This one didn't go perfectly. If I was doing a piece of paper, say a big sheet of paper, and doing that, I probably would prepare my tape first. I would then wet the surface of the paper. I'd lay it on the board, wet the surface of the paper with a sponge or a cloth, so it's not soaking, but just but damp. And then as quickly as possible, put the tape round. If you don't do it quickly, the paper starts to move and shrink or stretch. When it's wet, it stretches. And then you can't get this to go flat. You get humps and bumps and it won't flatten out. But the quicker you do it, the more you can get it down flat. It will be wrinkled in the middle. It'll go cockily like it does because it's stretching. But as long as this is put down nice and smoothly, you can then lay this down flat somewhere to dry. Don't put it upright because it's all the water, the gravity, the water comes down to the bottom and it all makes a mess of it. Do it flat, and it will, depending on the thickness of the paper, it will dry, and this will stretch out flat. So it's a bit of a palaver. It can make you feel very precious about the piece of paper you've stretched, because then you've got this wonderful bit of paper that you've taken ages to stretch, and you can't make a mess of it, sort of thing. So, you know, it's 6 2/3 really. It's a nice surface. It's a lovely surface to draw on, stretched paper. I don't know why. It'll be something to do with the size and the paper, I suspect, coming to the surface and doing something. But it certainly means that you can then paint on it, and even if it cockles up when it's when you're painting, because you've used quite wet paint, say, if you then leave it to dry, it'll then dry flat again, so you won't get any of that sort of slight bendiness that you get. And you can also do it with very thin paper, as I did here, and get it nice and flat as well. So it's got benefits.
Have you put any paint on the page before you stick it down?
No,
Right.
I put the paint on afterwards.
And then do you let it dry before you put the paint down, or after you've wet it?
You can put the paint on while it's still damp, but
Mhm.
or you can let it dry. I
Yeah.
think in this case I did it while it was still damp,
Mm.
and that does work. The main thing really is just making sure you don't have air bubbles and sort of bits where it's not stuck down properly. Sometimes if there's a tiny bit, it'll even out. It's all right. So
Mm.
it's worth if you've like the idea of using it, of doing say two. If you've got more than one board, you could do two or three at the same time, and then and you can do big sheets. You don't have to do little ones, and then you've got them sort of to use, and it feels less precious when you do that in a way. So what I thought I'd do now is put some paint on, and I thought I'd mix the paint. One lot, I'll put some of the retarder in one lot, and the other one I won't. So we can then carry on working on. I meant to get my hairdryer out, but maybe you can do two things. Let something dry while carry on with something else. And so just to see what happens when you use wet on wet with the retarded painting, the retarder in the paint. It's just seems to be quite. I don't know whether this will work, but it might be just quite nice to show its uses. So I'm going to well, you don't have to see me doing this, but I'll turn the camera around if I can. See my messy studio, and go down to there. And I think the camera might be upside down. I don't know this. Oh no, it's all right, I think. So I'm going to so I've got various things here. I've got tools. I've got palette knives, of course. A couple of brushes. This one here isn't a brush, actually. It's got a rubber tip. Somebody gave me that. So we'll see what that does. And then there's a clay tool. I think this is this. I don't know whether you can see it. It's got a sort of square edge and the round edge on that one that you do things with clay with it. But that's quite nice for scraping things. I've got this old mini, I don't know, pastry wheel or something or other. I don't know what that is. It makes quite a nice mark. A fork, plastic fork, but any kind of fork. Quite useful things to have, this sort of comey type thing. Quite nice to have. Credit card, and so on. And then that squeegee I showed you, the silicone squeegee, which has the same sort of uses as that. So they're all things that you could use. And I've got various paints here. I've got orange, just out of interest. I've got orange, cobalt turquoise. I was given that. I don't know what that is. Orange, and a raw sienna. So kind of red, yellow, and blue in a sense. I've also got some titanium buff, this off whitey neutral colour, and some white. So just for this first bit, I think what I might do is use the blue and the orange, and I'll do just straightforward, not mixed. Blue and orange there. And I'm going to use some retarder, which is this one here is called acrylic retarder, and it's a Schmink brand, but you can get lots of other brands. Sometimes they're called retarder, sometimes they're called slow drying medium, and they're fine if you can get the top off. But, so I'm going to put a bit of that down, just like the paint. And I'm going to mix some of that with this blue. I'm only doing small quantities because I've only got a small surface. So I've got blue, some of the retarder, and I'm just mixing it together. That was roughly about half and half-ish, I suppose. And I'm going to put some of that on with a brush and some with a palette knife, just to ring the changes. So I've got that, and I'll use this. No, I won't. I'll use this smoothish brush, and I've got it not a very a bit splayed out. And then I'm going to move this round. I perhaps won't do this all the time. I won't moving it around, but there, and I'm going to put them on. So this is on the non-sanded side. I don't know whether it'll look and feel any different. That's the brush. So it's sort of, let's get a bit more. So that's got the retarder in, so that shouldn't dry too quickly, we hope. Right, and this is the knife. You get a smoother surface, which is quite nice. You can also get the quite nice shapes. There's a bit more. There. And now I'm going to do, just wash my brush out. Wash that, so my brush is a bit wet now. And I'm going to use the other bit of paint, which doesn't have the retarder in it. I won't put the other medium in, I'll just use that here straight. I think it does feel a little bit smoother with having sanded that bit down. But not enough to make any real difference on the paper, I don't think. Not on this, the paper's quite smooth anyway, so that wasn't really. But you can think about sandpaper if you want to try smoothing areas down. And then here's the knife. Not much paint left there. And that's just on the flat paper. And I'll just leave that and just see what happens in for a little while. And then I thought we'd come to here and just sort of put paint on these surfaces and just see what the first layer looks like. So I'll use some orange for that, just to bring changes and give us a different colour. So really, this is nothing. None of this is kind of rocket science, but it's the sort of just going through quite slowly just the various things that you might sort of think about, learn about. Here's some orange, and I'm going to put it on this kind of rough thing, quite just sort of painting over it. It just paints over it. You can still see the lumps and bumps and feel them physically as well if you want to. You could then put a much bigger, much thicker layer on, I should say. And I don't think it makes a lot of difference really. You could always paint on any surface. But if you wanted to sort of scratch into your surface with a comb or something like that, you might get there, I've just put that on quite thinly. I've got the little kind of open pockets left there from there's a couple of marks there, and quite thin paint over that. It might be if you wanted to retain those, but you didn't want, you wanted layers, you could always mix your gesso with some paint and paint with that and make quite thick marks as well with that, which I could do, but maybe I won't do. So you can mix your gesso or you can buy I'm probably going to put it away again now. You can buy variants of the acrylic mediums. See, find the one I was using now. It's very old. Here it is. You can buy various of these pots, as you know, of acrylic mediums. This one here was also given to me, called Super Heavy Gesso. And I don't think I ever would have bought that, because I just buy a bigger thing of normal gesso, which is probably cheaper. But I looked at this heavy gesso and thought, well, I'll try that. And that's what this was put on here. So I could mix some of that with some paint, which I'll do. I will do it. Clean my palette knife first, and then mix some of that gesso with some more of that blue paint. Now I could mix some retarder in with that as well, but I won't. I'll just because that might help it not dry too quickly. So I'm mixing it in. If you put in, what I've done is put in about a third paint, or about a third paint and 2/3 gesso for this. So that makes it's white, although it dries No, it stays white actually. I think that's, yes, I think that stays white because it's gesso. You can get a clear one. So I've got a pale blue because it's got the white in. This is mostly, it's two-thirds gesso, one-third paint. And I'm going to put it on there, which is now dry, or on here. It's not all dry. It's quite thick, as you can see. I'm sort of smudging it and smearing it and messing about with it. I'm going to get that comb object thing I had, and you could do that, and then you might think, well, I quite like something like that. You might like, or we could use that rubbery thing I've got, or anything else. But I just happen to have this rubbery. I'm not sure what that's called. Actually, it's called. It's made by. It's called a color shaper. And I could, if I had this at the time, I could use that to do some of my little shapes. You could then, of course, smudge some of that out. Some of it's mixing because it's still wet underneath, so you can get a sort of smear that's quite nice in some of the places there. And it's a kind of trial and error thing. You sort of know that it might do something like that, but you don't know what it's going to look like until you do it. And you could draw with this.
Mm.
You can draw with other things, but that's actually a very nice thing to draw with because it's like drawing with a pencil. It doesn't feel any different. You can draw with a palette knife. That's taken the red paint off too, because that's quite, it's still wet. So all of those sort of, ways of working with an area are quite nice to do. You could obviously use this sort of way of working for something very realistic. If you're trying to do tree bark or something, or grasses or something, you could build up layers of different colors, and then using your drawing skills, you could draw into it and build something up that would be quite realistic if you so wanted to, I think. Now here we have this wet and the dry areas there. So I thought if I come back to the orange paint, I'm just going to put in a bit of the retarder with the orange paint, or some of it. And just see what happens if I sort of work into this. This is more like working with oils, say. So see, it's quite wet still underneath. So you get the mix of the blue and the orange together. What you can also do, of course, is exactly what you do with oil painting, is that you can then scrape it out. You can think, well, I don't like that bit. And you can just scrape it off. And that might well become a part of your oil painting, your scrapey bits. And then you come back with maybe a different brush. I'll get what colour have I got that there? I've got some orange here. And then you could, paint into this area here, let that dry possibly, and then paint into that. And then you could scrape it off again. So you've got more flexibility with moving the paint around with this than you do with, that's actually not dry yet, so that wouldn't work quite so well on there either. But on a dry bit, you would have less, as you all know, with working with acrylic on paper, it can get very kind of thin and sort of wishy-washy sometimes, and it dries before you've had time to turn around and think, what am I going to do? So it's quite nice to try the medium, I think. So what else was I going to show you? I know, using the squeegee, because that is quite nice. Especially with this wet on wet, you can scrape off a whole swathe on a bigger piece. It's really quite nice. Well, that's quite nice in its own right. The gesso has been sort of stained by the paper, and you get the kind of really thin lines that show where you've what am I trying to say? Shows the marks on the paper, I think, the marks from the painting the paper. I'm just going to try and wipe this off, and then you can use the point to draw with as well. You can change the kind of scrape, and then you go and do a thin line there. So you've got quite a lot of versatility with that. It's a very nice tool to use there. So that's all of those things you can do, which you can't really do with a brush, but you can do with these tools. I think that is brilliant. So that was that. There was something else. I know the other thing was the dry brushing, which is something that I've done before with classes. You kind of need a dry surface. I think what I might do is go onto this, and dry brushing is a sort of it's also, I don't know whether it's called sgraffito at all. It's where you can get quite a dry sort of hazy mixy quality without it being sloppy and wet. So I'm going to just use I've got a bristle brush, which is a bit damp because I've just been using it, but I'm going to put a bit of orange paint on it. Now this is where you really want very little paint, and you can kind of test it out on a piece of newspaper or something first to see how little you've got. And you sort of scumble on a painted surface. And for this, I'm just trying this orange. I'm going to try and do something on, yeah, that when it's dry. Now, in this case, it's sort of, as you do it, you sort of get it's very thin paint, really. And it's just a way of sort of putting another coat on without it being a definite sort of painting on top. You can stipple it too. You get a kind of stipply effect, which if you look closely, you can see it's quite hazy. Now that's quite nice. That looks a bit boring, but it's quite a nice way of working. Where it really works quite well is when I described to you, I should have done a yellow background. Described to you doing that the skies with the yellow underneath or the pink underneath and then blue on top. Let me just see if I've got a piece of yellow paper hanging around. No, not really. I do have. I've got this left from some example at some point. So it's got oranges on it. I'm going to put that up there. And then try putting kind of light blue on the surface. If you have a colour and then you put another colour on top that's tonally similar, and then try this, especially if it's complementary or something, or it could be a similar colour but tonally similar. You do get quite a nice effect. So I've got the light blue that I was using, and I'm going to just try and dry brush a bit on. Not working very well. It's got something in it. Oh, that's not very good. Doesn't work at all. Let's have another go. I think it's because I had the gesso in there, and it was not working very well. So let me just try with this. Let me just try that. There might be a bit too much paint on the brush. You really don't want that much. I'll try here. A bit better. I mean, you can do more than one layer, so if it's not even or not to your, I think this is a very good example. But let's carry on a bit more. Maybe it's not too bad. Because the blue and the orange are probably fairly similar tonally. And I'm just putting it on so that it's covering the orange, but not blocking it out, if you like. If you imagine that as a whole, perhaps a kind of larger area, it might give you the feeling of a bit like some of Patrick Heron's big. You can imagine doing those big paintings with a small brush. It would take weeks, I think. You can get quite a nice sort of, you can do a second layer even. So your sky is blue, but it's got this colour underneath it, which gives it somehow more body and more brightness, really, because the oranges complementary. I don't know how that looks like on the, does it, can you see that on the screen at all? Does it look at
Yes.
all? Yeah, it's sort of,
Yes, you can see it. Yeah.
you can. It's got a very nice quality, and it's also not just sky. I mean, it could be for anything, but if you're doing grasses, and that's, or not even just grasses, but an area that you want to be sort of, you know, greeny and moving into shadows, say. So you have this, and then you gradually add a bit of something to dull down the blue and or darken it or dull it down, and then you move over, and then you can get this nice sort of mixy kind of edge, soft edge to the two colours next to each other, rather than just, you know, the usual sort of painted edge. You can sort of create that sort of feeling of almost like with watercolour, where you get one colour melding into another. So that's something that's worth trying. Right, so what was the next thing I was going to do? I was just going to show you the collage pieces, so you can see how I was trying to use the collage as a starting point. And then we'll probably stop, I think, probably. So I had, let's move this out of the way. Start off with that, I've got paint on my hand. I started off with the hoping you can see this, with the collage piece. Now it might just have too much shine on it from the it's got glass on it. I'm just going to change the lights a little bit. I'll put more on the moment. You can probably still see shine. You can still see shine. Anyway, this was the collage I did that I was working for. I don't have the painting that I ended up doing from it, but it was the one where I turned it round, and I kind of started working that way. So that I had, so all these shapes and the kind of way that they fit together, the division between this grey one and that cream one, and the kind of patch of yellow, and the division down here, and then this purpley. I kind of brought those into the painting, so that helped me divide it up and decide on the kind of blocks, the areas that I was going to work from. And then I had some areas that were much more detailed with these tree-like, branch-like, tree-like shapes. In fact, I do have some of the papers left from the leftovers that I, there's a couple here that I didn't use. There's a bit of grey there, so you can imagine that sort of sticking on there. There's a bit here from something as well. So those collage pieces, in some of the paintings I've done, I've stuck them all on, or stuck some of the collage pieces on and carried on painting. In others, I've worked from them. So that was the sort of value of those. And then once I'd done, same time, here is a collage piece that I've sort of finished as a collage. It's a bit shiny as well, but that's got a lot of these. It's got a lot of stuck-on bits, and then painted on top of that. So there's quite a lot of marks. Here is made with a marker pen, not stuck on, and then painted over. So that white trail there is painted over the collage. So it's combining the painting and the collage, and so I did quite a lot of that sort of work.
Jane, can I
Yeah.
ask a question about the glue you use in collage?
Good question. Yeah, the thing that seems to work best for me is to use a acrylic gel medium, so it's not so wet as the runny stuff, and it comes in the same sort of pots. And the one I've got is a Liquitex one. And what you can do is, ideally, is to work on stretched paper if you're sticking it up, you know, so stretch the bottom paper. So then that's not going to move when you start sticking things on it. And then put with a brush or a palette knife, a thin layer of the gel on both sides, so the surface you're sticking onto and on the top side, and then have plenty of clean newsprint to kind of put on top. You need to stick it on, and then you're putting some clean paper on top, and then pushing out the sticking it down from the center outwards, so that you can push any bubbles out. It's not easy, and it takes a bit of practice, but you can do it. I do have a roller I sometimes use, but you do want to try and get rid of the bubbles. It doesn't always happen, but you can do it. I've also used Mod Podge, it's a different kind of glue, and they are both what do you call it? Acid free, so you don't get sort of brown.
Jane,
Yes.
I used to do a lot of collage, but I tend to use PVA glue watered down. Do you think that's not a good idea, or?
Well, I think it's too wet, and it tends to, but if you can make it work, then that's fine.
I make it work, it's fine, but I wondered about long term, whether it would yellow,
If it's acid free, it's all right, and if it's not, it's not. And it often, it's quite hard to find out, because you can look it up and you don't get much answer when you
no
Google
idea.
it. But there are some, I'm pretty sure I got an answer with the Liquitex acrylic gel that it's more expensive than straightforward PVA, but you don't really use masses of it. That is acid free, and it doesn't go brown. And the Mod Podge, I'm pretty sure, doesn't either. So that's really the answer to that. And I think the firmer ones, which are less watery, are better. They don't seem to kind of make the paper go all wobbly straight away. They're just a bit firmer. But there's nothing wrong with PVA otherwise, except for, if it's not going to last or if it's too wet. But the main thing is is pressing it out from the center, and I think putting the glue on both sides, what that does is it stops you getting any kind of, it limits the possibility for you getting any dry bits that you missed. Because if you've got a dry bit that you missed and that doesn't stick down, then you automatically get some kind of bump. Because what happens is that paper moves differently. If you're using different sorts of paper move differently. So you get some that stretch more than others or shrink more than others. If you're altering the grain of the paper, which of course you are always sticking on because you're shifting things around a bit, that also means it moves different. So it's never going to lie really nice and straight in a kind of in an atmosphere that's going to vary. So getting it all stuck down, so at least none of it can move, is the only way of doing it. This one seems to have worked all right. I don't seem to have got, it's a bit lumpy there. I can see a little bit of a feeling there, but mostly it's not too bad. So with that one, I was kind of,
Sorry, do you varnish it afterwards? Do you
Well, no, I mean, this is just under a cellophane thing, it's with a mount. No, I would put it under glass. I wouldn't varnish it. But you could try doing it. I have done some with some of that cold wax on, I think, and that seemed to be all right. I did do some with a varnish. Actually, I did do some with a varnish layer, and I did have a bit of trouble with it. What it did was it really, because it was sort of had a slight sheen to it, and it kind of showed up the bits that I hadn't done very well. So it wasn't so good. But yes, you could varnish it, but I don't know whether you have to. And then I did a painting which has got cold wax on to. Now this painting kind of works two ways in a way. So I've done a lot of moving this one around upside down and not so on. But I think you can sort of see the link between this and the previous thing I showed you, this shape here, the trees. There's quite a lot of textured stuff going on with kind of scratching bits and printing bits over them. Sort of loose painting here on those bits. Some of it's painted, some of it's stuck on, and some of it's sort of copying from the painted bits, and some of it's actually stuck on. And I quite like that one. I don't like it as much as the other one that I did, but it was kind of working with this idea of the collage things. And actually, just going backwards, I've just remembered now that when I was doing that first collage, I did quite several, which I've now torn up and used for different things, but several of things like that. There, which is several bits of paper put together in the colours that I I was trying to, it was a bit like looking at the coloured squares. I was painting and messing about with coloured bits of paper, painting the paper to get ideas from my photographs. That was a way of working from the photographs, and that was just one I've got left that I didn't mess up. And that also gave me the idea of dividing a painting up a bit into kind of areas like that, sort of well, they are to do with the landscape, they're to do with the horizon and so on, but also breaking it up into I don't know, shapes that you can then work on, like this, or like the paintings that have the two panels that where you can swap things around and change the positioning of things. And these sort of paper sketches helped towards doing that. That makes sense. So I quite like that one. I don't suppose I'll do anything more with it. So I think we should stop now. I think it's 12:15, and it'd be nice for you to have a chance to do something, even if it's only picking out one thing that I've talked about, and you could practice either working from your pictures, your drawings, or just trying out techniques. But maybe trying to take one of your drawings and think, I'm going to take a piece of that drawing and have a go at starting to do something with it. Do you think you could, or is there too much? You've got too many things that you you wouldn't know where to start, is the worry I have.
No, I think it's okay.
You think you'd be all right? It would be good if you did, and I'll have a chat with you, Chris, when we finish, just so that because I've looked at your picture. So in that case, have a go then. See what you can do. It's now 12:15, and we finish at 2:30. So if you have from now until say 10 to 2, I'm just giving myself some time because I couldn't get all the pictures on last time. Well, until 2, but 10 to 2, send me an image or thereabouts of what you've done. And I will spend the 10 minutes, 10 to 2 till 2 o'clock, putting them on to another PowerPoint, and then we can talk about it from 2 o'clock. Is that all right? Is that about right?
That's absolutely fine. Yeah.
And then in that time, if you do want to contact me, I'll try and take notes and answer your WhatsApp message or your email or whatever it might be, and get back to you.
Apologies from me, Jane, because I'll have to sign off now. I've got a rehearsal for this concert for this evening.
Okay.
But it's been a fantastic morning. Really, lots of great ideas. Really helpful. So thanks for that.
Oh, thank you very much as well. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping you've got enough there. And
Yeah, definitely.
go
And
back to it.
I'll keep in
Yeah.
touch. I hope to be able to send you something before too long. I love that last painting, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And please do, yes, after the event, I mean, I'll say this later on, but for you because you're going. What I did last time, I think it's quite nice, is sort of I can't remember whether I gave you a couple of weeks or 3, maybe something like that. I said, any work that you do within the time, let me have a piece, by a certain date, I would say. And then I'll do another little thing together and just send it out to you all without us meeting, but just so that you can see what you've done. Some people, weren't able to do anything in that time, and with Christmas coming, you might not be able to, but we could do something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
And just something that you've managed to get done. It's just as a sort of final thing, so you've got a bit of a follow-up. So that's the plan. So now I'm going to stop the recording and we'll start again later on. So send me your work around 10 to 2, and then we'll meet at 2. So this gives me that 10 minutes to get it together. Okay?
Yeah.
And Chris, I'll stop the recording, Chris, and then we'll just, if you want to hang around, we can talk about the picture.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll stop that